everyone, and a very good evening to you all. This is Shama, your host for the evening. Super excited to welcome you all to the second edition of the Product Leadership Festival, the Product Edition. With the successful completion of the first edition, the Strategy Edition, we are delighted to present to you all the Product Edition with some amazing speakers in line for you to share their insightful experience and keynote sessions. We are on the day 5 of the Product Edition with a brilliant fireside chat coming up and many more such sessions organized till the 22nd of May. The 10-day festival includes keynote talks, panel discussions, fireside chats, and masterclass by renowned speakers from top tech companies around the world. So once again, a very warm welcome to you all, folks. Thank you for joining us on a late evening on a Sunday, and let's proceed. The Product Leadership Festival is organized by the Institute of Product Leadership. And as you can see on the slide, we have the data and design editions coming in the coming months. And you have a chance to register for it right now and win exciting prizes as we progress with each edition. Please follow our LinkedIn page as in the chat window to keep yourself updated and be a part of the running contest. So folks, go ahead and register for all the editions right away. Check the chat window for the URL. So for those who have missed out on the strategy edition or the festival organized last year, check out the link in the chat window to watch videos of 50+ speakers sharing their key learnings and career insights in product, data, design, and leadership. Encouraging you all to share it within your network and friends and spread the knowledge. So now, before we dive into today's insightful session, let me give you a quick intro to the Institute. The Institute of Product Leadership is Asia's first business school providing accredited degree programs and certification courses in product management, product leadership, data science, design, and strategy. The Institute has partnered with 3 universities in India and the University of Houston in the United States. The Institute was founded in 2012 with a singular mission of creating 10,000 product leaders in the country. Ever since, the organization has designed and delivered programs in collaboration with various institutes, universities, and corporates to the senior working professionals to help them make the transition into a product leadership role. The Institute has built and developed a community of over 2,000+ successful alumni leading the product, data, and design teams across the world. You can find out all about the Institute and the programs offered on our website. Please check the chat window for the URL. Here's some exciting news for the attendees here tonight. You have an opportunity to win a free digital course. The best asked question in tonight's session will get this reward. Please scan the QR code on the screen to check out an array of digital courses offered by the Institute. The winner will get to pick a course of their own choice. The Institute offers new age skill courses for every step of your career. Every course is built, curated, and designed by industry practitioners. The Institute of Product Leadership is glad to announce the ATAL Innovation Scholarship exclusively for the participants of the festival. The scholarship worth rupees 1 lakh is extended for the EMBA in Product Leadership program offered by the Institute. This is a limited period scholarship, folks, so I encourage you all to scan the QR code on the screen and talk to your program counselor for the next steps and formalities. So once our speaker for tonight presents his insights, we'll open up for questions. Please keep the questions ready. You can ask your questions in Zoom in the Q&A section. The session is also being streamed live on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So viewers on any of these channels, please post your questions in the comment section and we'll share it with the speaker. So on the last day of the product edition, which is on the 22nd of May, we have organized an open conference day. Open conference is a platform for you all to be a speaker and share your knowledge and insights with the world. Aspiring speakers can submit their topics and the shortlisted ones will get a chance to deliver a talk for 30 minutes. Alternatively, please scan the QR code on the screen to vote for your favorite speaker and help them win. So folks, if you have missed out on this opportunity for the strategy edition, please enroll now to be a speaker and bring out the lead in you. Now coming to tonight's session, please allow me to welcome Mr. Sai Satish Vedam, the moderator of this session. Mr. Vedam is the Chief Product Officer, Senior Faculty and Executive Coach at the Institute of Product Leadership. He was most recently the Director of Product Management at Oracle. Great to have you here, Mr. Veda. Handing the session over to you.
Thank you, Shama, and good evening, all of you. Good morning to you, Raj. I know it's a bit early. Thank you so much for joining. Before I introduce you to the audience today, just a couple of housekeeping things I'd like to go over for the audience here. So first of all, I really want to acknowledge the situation that we're all going through, the trying circumstances, especially in India. I really hope that all of you take additional care, stay safe, be at home. And we really hope that these insightful sessions from thought leaders across the world serve as a useful distraction. So, tell your friends and colleagues to join these sessions to gain some insights. Now, as Shama explained, the event is streamed live on multiple platforms, right? So it is streamed on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. And we would like to keep the session as interactive as possible. Today's session is a different format than what we've been having in the past few days. This is a fireside chat, so it's more conversational rather than a one-way presentation. So we will have ample opportunity to take audience questions as well. So if you are joining us on Zoom webinar, please ask your questions on the Q&A box, not on the chat box, because there's a lot of chatter and it can get lost. So if you're joining us on LinkedIn Live, feel free to ask a question on the thread, on the LinkedIn thread. And we will pick it up and I'll bring that in the context of the discussion with Dr. Raj at the end of the fireside chat. And all of you, if you are on YouTube or Twitter, feel free to share this with other colleagues and let them know that an exciting session is along the way. And it's my privilege to introduce Raj Yavatkar to this session. Raj is an influential technology and product leader. I think for many people who have been working in technology for some time, Raj is not a stranger. At present, he's the Chief Technology Officer of Juniper Networks, where he is responsible for charting out a technology strategy to lead and execute essentially new innovative products in the area of intelligent self-driving networks, security, mobile edge, hybrid clouds, cloud virtualization, and several of those areas. Before joining Juniper, Raj was leading a very large team of engineers at Google Cloud Platform, basically delivering the cloud networking infrastructure to Google Cloud customers. I'm sure that must have been a very exciting role, Raj. Maybe we'll hear about that later in the conversation if we can. And prior to Google Cloud, Raj was leading the, in fact, he came up with the idea, defined, and took it to market, the VMware Cloud Foundation. So if any of you are familiar with the virtualization space, virtual clouds, the VMware Cloud Foundations actually gave a very simple way and easy way to manage that infrastructures, workloads, and everything. Now, we have among us an individual who has actually had 45 plus patents, 60 research papers, 5 internet standards, and started your career as at Intel and rose to the position of Intel Fellow, which coming from a similar company, Sun Microsystems. I know that's an amazing achievement, and it's my privilege, and I'm glad to introduce you to all of the audience here, Dr. Raj. Welcome, and again, thanks for joining on your morning. So before we get started with the discussion, I thought we'll take a really quick poll of the audience, just to understand the background and where they come from, especially what are they responsible for in their roles and responsibilities, so that we can bring in more relevant questions and spend more time for the audience to be beneficial. So if we can launch the first poll to understand what your current role is, right? Whether you are in engineering, whether you are in product management or strategy, delivery or consulting, mostly around implementation and delivering services or projects or products to your customers, or other roles. So I hope, Raj, you were able to see the polls and the real-time change in them, right? Great. So we certainly have, don't have a good mechanism to actually take these polls on LinkedIn Live. Now, I would put that in context and say maybe experience needs to take precedence from LinkedIn side to make such options available for LinkedIn stream, because this is something that I know everyone who is streaming a webinar or a talk would really find useful, but we'll get into that later. Great, thank you for taking the poll. Let's bring up the second poll, so that, and then folks, encourage all of you to just, it's also kind of a warm up, right? So, look at that choices or options that you have and let us know, so that, we tailor this discussion or kind of put more emphasis on this. Which of the disruptions have affected your company? You can choose as many as you believe has happened. Of course, pandemic, unsurprisingly, has affected many businesses. Some of them very positively, and some of them, of course, have been almost destroyed. Right. So that's a state that we are in. So clearly, technology disruption is at the forefront. Again, I think not a surprise, but I'm glad that our audience, not just getting carried away by the current situation and looking at it realistically. Super. Again, would love to cross more than 70% of the audience taking the poll on Zoom. Let's bring up the final one, the third one. In your organization right now, depending on the org structure that you have and where you are in, where do you report to, right? So most of the product managers might be reporting to either leaders within the country or outside the country. And engineering, of course, the past experience shows a lot of them report within the country, which is unsurprising in the results here as well. Would appreciate a little more participation, folks. I know it's a Sunday evening, 8 p.m., and Monday morning blues is staring in front of us. So, but hopefully, your time is well spent in this 1 hour. Great, thank you. I think it looks like a majority of them from product management report to their teams or management outside India, to just quickly summarize. So with that, again, thank you, Raj, and welcome again. So we can get started with some questions that I have about the topic, innovating for experience first. But before we get going, did you have any opening remarks or words that you wanted to say?
Sure. First of all, Sai, thank you for the introduction. It was a very kind introduction. I think I want to point out that you yourself have a very good expertise and experience, having worked in Sun and Oracle and so on. So very happy to join you guys. As you said at the top of the thing, I'm really personally affected by the crisis in India, including extended family. So I know what people are going through. So I really appreciate people joining this particular product leadership festival. And I hope everyone stays safe and the family stays safe.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So to kickstart the conversation, and especially the very relevant and interesting topic on innovating for experience first, Raj, when we think about experience, it's usually an amorphous construct, right? And when you look around many companies, products and services, they often wrap their traditional offerings in the cloud of an experience. And there's nothing wrong by that. But experience by nature are very personal, right? And that also means that by default, they are unique. because everybody's experience is unique. The way they look at things and want to experience is unique. And also, which leads to a very interesting thing is, which is, simply priceless, right? So when we start looking at, products that are prioritizing experience, products or services or offerings, can you give us some examples of what kind of products or offerings, in your view, are really good ones? And I mean, we can look at around us and pick up products and services. The classic examples being, you don't, the cafes like Cafe Coffee Day or Starbucks essentially don't talk about coffee anymore, right? So you don't buy a coffee, you essentially go to Starbucks, or you get into the experience of it, right? And people who travel in airports, you're basically saying you're not waiting at the gate, right? You can sit in a lounge, you can experience the lounge around it, and you're still waiting, but they are wrapping that experience around it, right? And in a way, what Apple tried to do with the Apple stores, right? So you don't go to buy a phone. Many people actually go to Apple store to hang out, right? And that's essentially how they created that experience, right? You don't have to buy anything. You just walk in, look at some products. There are people around which will help you understand it, and you can walk away, right? And that experience now makes want people to buy into their offerings or products or services, right? So these are some things that we can look around and understand what we mean by experience. But it'll be helpful if you can bring some other, either in the consumer world or in the enterprise world, technology, non-technology, that will be helpful.
Yeah, so I think that's a very good question. So I think the genius behind this was Steve Jobs, in my opinion. In 2007, with the introduction of, and before that also iPod and then iPhone came, and that really changed the way we think of the products, because his focus was ultimately on what the experience is, right? And that has carried over in the last 15 years or so, where I think people are seeing, like you said, in every aspect, right? I'll give an example that today, if you look at Indian market, like if you use Flipkart or Amazon for shopping, it's a very different experience, right? It's a very different experience in terms of how you shop, how you get the products delivered. So the cloud-based delivery has become sort of a completely different shopping experience. My sisters, for example, shop completely on Flipkart or Amazon. It gets delivered. It's a very different experience, right?
Yeah.
Now, a similar thing you'll see in how computing is getting delivered. But if you look at now, people are used to getting computing and storage delivered as service, which is a very different experience. You can make an API call on AWS and spin up a virtual machine, get compute and get storage and so on and so forth. That is also bleeding into enterprises. Now, the enterprise IT managers or IT administrators or DevOps people, they want a similar experience when they consume any products on-prem or in enterprise. Similar experience. They do not want this old method of using CLI and dealing with some things, or file a ticket and wait for 2 weeks for a server to be spun up. That model doesn't work anymore. So I think those things are bleeding over into enterprise in the areas of networking, compute, storage, security, and so on. Right? The other thing is how you consume even in enterprise applications changing, because of people bring their own devices. They might bring their iPad or Microsoft Surface or phone, smartphone, and so due to that also the requirements are changing now. People do want to see different experience they're used to in consumer side, or on a cloud-based services they want in enterprise also.
Right. Great. I think, often there are a lot of examples, as we said, from a consumer point of view, because it's easy to relate, it's easy to understand. But when we talk about experience of products or services, in fact, they touch, as you said, the employees in an enterprise, right? Whether that experience is provided by their own company or from the products and services that they are hiring or buying from the other company. And in the example that you brought in terms of, storage as a service is a while it has simplified the consumption and usage of it, for a developer, it's a very different experience now, right? So the way that you want to use it, embed it, integrate it, is a completely transformed. In fact, the other day, actually a few days back, when I was having a conversation with a few of the executive MBA students, one of them who works in Adobe, the person actually said, Adobe apparently conducts what they call as an experience-a-thon, right? And the way that they do it is before even customer touches their products, right? And the frontline support teams who are going to be handling these customers, who are far removed from the product development, right? They are not the people who are developing it, so they don't come with that bias or prior understanding of this product. But then now they're wearing the hat of a customer and walking through that and defining what that experience should be, and giving that feedback to do that. In fact, another great example from the B2B that I heard or enterprise is Workday. Right now, it's interesting. Workday is apparently assigning a single customer a dedicated or a personalized plan for its customers to reach their goals. And to help them achieve that, whoever is using Workday, they're actually assigning a dedicated customer success manager. Now, a lot of companies, big companies, have been doing that, right? So it's just that now.
Talk about what you're doing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I guess the next question is about, why should anyone care now? What is it? Why is this more important now than before to start looking at prioritizing putting the experience first?
Yeah. So I think you have to take the both market context and the business context, right? So let's start with Indian demographics is very unique, right?
Yeah.
If you have two kinds of people in India, millennials and Gen Z. The Gen Z are the people who are 25 years old approximately. Millennials are up to 35 years. Indian demographics suggests that 50% of the population is Gen Z. 65% is 35 and below. Those people are growing up in this consumer world of consuming smartphones, buying event IPL tickets using mobile phone, doing mobile payments. So the experience they come with, they bring that experience to work, and they expect that kind of experience also from the products and services they're consuming for work. That's number one. And this demographics is not unique to India, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Egypt. A lot of countries have this demographics, and where the expectation is that you should provide that. So I think that provides really the market context. Also, the market context is that many companies, like your example of Adobe, Salesforce, Reliance Jio in India, for example, the examples of companies that are focusing on delivering experience first. At Juniper, we are doing the same thing for our customers, because we said, you give an example of customer support. Customer support today is archaic.
Yeah.
There's one support who is barely trained, person providing some support, doing some playbook and deciding where to route the call, then L2 and then L3. That doesn't work very well. If you have customer support people always focused on what experience the product service is delivering already, they have been trained, they can bring different customer support experience also.
Yeah.
So I think in the context of market and business, where if you want to compete in today's world with the kind of demographics we have, I think this becomes very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the number one driver that you mentioned is the changing demographics in terms of the base expectations of what an experience should be. And that is mostly has been driven by the consumer experiences that they have grown up living in. And earlier we used to call as bring your own device. Now they're bringing the experiences and the expectations on the experiences, and setting that as a bar within the organizations, right? So now what would you think about the other driver or factor where it has now become really easy to share the experiences, right? Everybody is on networks and social media and everything. Any bad experience from any product or a service instantly just gets that
media.
right. Earlier, what we used to call as a CNN moment, right? If it came on CNN, means that it's a big deal. Now there is a CNN moment every day for some brand or the other.
Not every hour, every minute, right? I mean, it could
Every
come on
minute,
Twitter, it could come on
right?
LinkedIn. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So obviously companies, products and brands would want to do everything possible to make sure that what people are sharing, whether it is a consumer, whether you are an employee or anything, give them the best possible experience. So that seems to be it.
also business need in the sense that if you want to grow your market share, you
Hmm.
want to get your products more popular, you have to focus on that. And it's no
Right.
longer how good the product is from performance, reliability, availability point of view, but it's what experience.
And companies are of course scrambling to get to differentiating themselves on the experience part of it. Now we can't avoid the shadow of the current situation and the impact that pandemic has had on several businesses who have actually thrived on the promise of providing good experiences, right? Look at the businesses like hospitality industry, right? I mean, restaurants, hotels, tourism, they're pretty much in a very bad state. However, there are other areas.
Transform. Last 12 months or 14 months, they have to quickly transform
Yes.
to stay.
So it's an imperative, right? I mean, you're saying that it's an absolute imperative for businesses to take stock and say, especially now with this impact that people have had, how do you rethink, how do you reimagine your product or as a service? Maybe digital first, but digital doesn't mean just slapping some apps and tools on top of that, but rethink the whole experience, right? So, simple examples that we are living through, all of us, is a teacher and student interaction, right, is completely transformed, and which requires us to rethink how to do that. And funnily, another day somebody was bringing this example of video collaboration software, right? Until pandemic hit, people just expected the bare minimum. I join the call and we talk and go away. Now people are making the choices based on some minute things, like, oh, Zoom provides a blur background, and I that is my need now, because I don't have a great background, and the Google Meet or somebody else is not doing it. So this triggered a lot of opportunities from the experience standpoint as well, right? So
By the
any
way,
yeah.
it's not just on a very easily noticeable thing. It is happening in segments you will not expect to.
Yeah.
An example I'll give is Juniper serves lots of telcos, service providers,
Okay.
who basically run the internet, right? All the wide area connectivity is provided by some telcos, some service provider in some country.
Mm-hmm.
And this is completely invisible typically to the consumer. The pandemic changed that, because now that everybody's on video conference, they know what sort of experience they're getting. So even the service providers, products that and services we are delivering,
Yes.
more focused on their experience, our customers' experience, so
Right.
they can deliver the right kind of experience to their customer, which is a very different way of thinking about a product, which is normally barely visible.
Right. So now you're saying now companies like Juniper and probably other network providers are getting a lot of inputs and emphasis from your customers, saying that, look, we need to do this because it improves the experience of our customers, right? Whether it is quality of service, whether it is high definition or pipes or buffering, like all of those.
One concrete example I'll give. There used to be that people used to do capacity planning on the matter of weeks or days, right? Because typically they will look at the traffic patterns and then add capacity. Pandemic changed. Now they want to be able to do forecasting. So we are using machine learning and artificial intelligence to keep track of the traffic on hourly basis and immediately do predictive analytics to forecast so that we can help them add capacity. And they want to be able to add that capacity by not some filing some ticket that gets routed and a couple of weeks later capacity is added. They want to add capacity on demand, which is a very different experience, because then their customers, who are enterprises mainly doing business to business connectivity, have very different experience. So I think it is really reverberating or spreading to different aspects of economy and business, and that's why it's more important now.
Fascinating. I think the impact of how the customer or consumer behavior and expectations on the service provider, which drives more needs and need for innovation on the technology providers, right? So now, are there any telltale signs, or rather some kind of a methodology or a framework to identify for products and services that are ripe for experience first, right? I mean, I don't know if every product and offering should take that approach, but are there some characteristics or attributes that you look at and say these type of market needs right? Identifying what the customer is looking for, what their pain points are, what they're trying to solve, so that they are right for experience first. In your view?
Yeah, I think there almost every aspect. I'll give you an example, right?
Yeah.
Typically, the product design and engineering ignored the experience part, right?
Mm.
The focus was on performance,
Right.
SLA, security, availability, and so on.
Mm.
Now, the UX research, user
Mm.
experience research, is the most important aspect.
Right.
You want to use UX researchers, which are not technical people from engineering perspective.
Mm.
They bring different kind of experience, and that's where you start. They go and do the research. They actually try out the products. They survey the customers. They do the research. That starts informing you how to think about a product design in different aspects. So that's the number one.
Mm.
Number two is that you also want to make sure that, I'll give you an example, right? Every company tends to have some kind of hands-on lab so that people can virtually try out the products and learn and do training and all.
Yeah.
But I think you have to start thinking about is not only that the customers are going to try out the product, but start with your engineers trying out the product.
Mm.
How many engineers in security try out the networking product, or vice versa? But if you make them do the hands-on lab, send the customer support that you mentioned, then what happens is they have very different takeaway with respect to what experience means. It's very easy to criticize somebody else's product, right? But once you have to use it and give constructive feedback based on what you experience, then you start thinking about your own product. How should I design my own product differently? Am I delivering the right kind of experience? So that goes beyond product management and product leadership, right? It really starts percolating to the different parts of the organization. I think that's the second part is very important.
Great. I think, in a way, you're saying that taking a very customer-centric view, right? And customer centricity, and there are, of course, different methodologies, frameworks like design thinking, user research, all of that definitely comes into the picture. In fact, in one of the previous sessions on the Product Leadership Festival, a design leader actually said something in which I think I can relate to what you're saying is, look at places where people are draining their time, where people's time is draining, meaning they are either waiting in queues, they are either commuting, they are doing time pass, and those are great opportunities to look for bringing that experience first, right? It's one way. The other thing, I also believe that, especially this is very popular in India, right? We love to put things together, and we have a name for this, right? The jugaad that we bring up, right? And the reason that exists is because many customers have not found a full product or a solution that satisfies or addresses their needs completely.
They take it into their own hands.
Their own hands, right? And hence maybe those are the opportunities to look for and say, hey, here is where let's understand what a great experience might be and weave around that particular area, right?
By the way, another thing I want to point out is that the discipline of user-centered design, the experience has been around in India for a long time. People don't realize. National Institute of Design in Ahmedabad and IIT Bombay has an industrial design center. They have been graduate in this area for 30, 40 years, right? So I think you have to just look at what they expanded from consumer products to all kinds of industrial things and so on. So there are some courses available to also learn, and you don't have to become expert in user experience, UX, but you can start bringing the thinking into your engineering and product management and product design.
Right. No, so essentially you're emphasizing that everyone who is in the business of products, right? Whether you are a product developer, an engineer, a product manager, a product leader, having a good enough understanding of that customer centricity and the design approach, the user experience approach is absolutely critical, is what you're saying. Now, in a typical enterprise context, right, there are various touch points for customers, right? Right from the buying journey for the economic buyer, the customer, and using purchasing the product, setting it up, using it. I'm sure in Juniper, there is a whole set of activities, every company, right? So customer goes through that journey is what we call. Are there any specific areas that you believe would need to focus more on the customer experience first, including, and of course, the customer service that you talked about? right?
Yes.
And if so, what are the possible ways that one can start looking at some examples or some tips around it?
Yeah. So I really like to call it a life cycle management of the product.
Okay.
Starts with day -1, day 0, day 1, day 2,
Sure.
right? Day -1 is the purchasing experience you talked about. And
Mm-hmm.
no longer enterprise IT is the purchaser of products and services necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Lines of business now, because of the cloud experience, are also very active in terms of deciding which products they want to consume and
Yeah.
how they want to consume. So that day -1 experience, reaching out to those customers is very important to make the purchasing, trying it out, right? Providing a very easy way to people to try and buy, pay as you go. All that experience is important. People don't want to sign a 3-year enterprise license agreement anymore. They want to pay as you go. That's what they're doing on AWS. They're paying as you go.
Yeah.
So that's day -1. Day 0 use, how do you install and bring up the product? It's not good to say that you will take 1 month with some professional services help to bring the product into deployment and experience. People want to do it in 1 day, 2 days. That is a very different type of experience, requires lots of automation. So for example, Juniper, we are making sure there's a lot of automation in deployment and bring it up.
Yeah.
So that day 0 experience is good. And day 1 and day 2 is the operational aspects, including customer service and all. So use of machine learning in customer service can also change. For example, the traditional model of, I'll come to day 1 and day 2 also, but I want to go to the other end of the bookend, which is customer support. Rather than doing L1, L2, L3 kind of a traditional structure, what we are looking at is using machine learning. Because if you have a phone home capability in the product, which constantly sends you telemetry, you can track it and start using predictive analytics to even start predicting when the failures could happen, which cable is likely to fail. So you can send advanced RMA to the customers. Customer support, when the call comes in, L1 person should be able to get very good advice in terms of what the likely problem is based on all the other data you have seen. So they don't have to route it to L2 and so on. So you start changing the feedback loop in the customer support also in terms of how quickly you can provide a customer support. Day 1 and day 2 are also important with respect to how the customer is operating the product, right? It should not be based on just CLI. Nowadays, people are used to very nice user experience with respect to charts and metrics, which can correlate between the alerts and events. Old method of pager, carrying a pager and pager going off is very outdated. Now people want to do that. So there are different aspects of this that you have to attack. Day -1, day 0, 1, 1, 2, and so on.
Sure. So in that context, I'll pick one question that's coming from the audience, especially on LinkedIn. Rohit Devnath is asking, how is Juniper using analytics or any other technology to improve the experience of customer service or support?
Right. So I think I'll give 2 examples. One is that we have a company we acquired 2 years back called ismiss.ai. They provide self-remediating Wi-Fi connectivity experience from client to cloud based on cloud managed software. So if you have a Wi-Fi service that is, so for example, in an enterprise, right, or in a distribution center like Walmart's or Costco, what they have done is that they constantly collect data, telemetry from your endpoint device like your phone, or iPad, or MacBook, as well as access points. Using machine learning, it's called Marvis, the engine, they correlate those constantly. So they are able to cut down the number of troubleshooting tickets by 90% in some of the environments. Because what they do, by using these correlations, they are able to self-remediate the problem. So I'll give you an example. Your Wi-Fi connectivity is not very good. It could be that your DNS cache is stale. They go and flush it automatically. Or your DHCP server is stuck and you are not getting connection. They restart it. These are some simpler examples. But now your data published by some of our largest customers like Walmart, 90% of troubleshooting tickets don't happen. That's the customer service in which you use AI. That's one example. Similar thing we are now bringing it to data center. Data center, the problem is that most of the networking is complex because there is a flow fabric, leaf spine, multiple levels. And anytime there's a problem happens, troubleshooting that is not very easy, right? You typically go through the process of saying which switch may have a problem. Using the same analytics example where you are constantly collecting the events, correlating it, and also you let the customer describe the intent they have. You constantly check against the intent. So you can start providing the troubleshooting or root cause identification very proactively, very quickly using the closed loop automation is another experience we are doing. That's a company also we acquired initially, but we developing further is Abstra, which is the leader in such closed loop automation analytics.
No,
So
great
we are
examples.
now
I think
extending that to the entire product portfolio.
no, absolutely. I think those are great examples of, especially from an enterprise perspective, how you can proactively use technology to proactively stop issues from bubbling up, right? The best way to provide the great customer experience is not to let the problem surface to the customer, right? So
So,
then,
have a self-healing network, self-remediating network.
sure.
That's
Okay. Now, while we talk about, think about experience first, look at areas to bring that in any product, technology, digital, non-technology products. What are the challenges that you typically found by, or challenges for product managers or even businesses to take the experience first approach? What are the barriers?
I think the number one barrier tends to be that typically you are driven by competitive pressure to
Mhm.
define the product features first because you want to be ahead of the competition. In
Mm.
fact, you want to predict and go ahead. So when that focus is there, the experience starts becoming secondhand because you really want to focus on that engineering. So that's number one barrier. Number two, I think the product managers may not be so familiar with the user experience research methodology, UX. To some extent, I have sometimes seen some skepticism also because it's soft skill. It's
Yeah.
really feel good kind of a thing, which
More
is
of
not.
empathy and yeah, not analytical, but more empathetic towards it. Yeah.
I think people are not used to that, and then the people start giving lip service to it, right?
Mm, mm,
And
mm,
the third one is really that who you talk to. When you do product research, you go to talk to potential customers.
mm.
If they're also like you, and they are still going to be talking about the old way of doing things, then there's less motivation to do.
A confirmation bias, if you will, right? So yeah,
That's
great. Super. And what about in that context? I've come across this myself in a couple of times with other people is falling into the trap of novelty of technologies or novelty technologies, right? Just because some technology is out there and people are talking about it, and then there's less effort or less diligence on deciding whether that is even right for us, right? Because most often they realize it along the way, and I don't know why we picked machine learning when it could have been solved simply by business rules,
Yes.
right? In some ways of it, have you encountered that as any barrier in any organization?
Yeah, so
That yeah.
all the organizations go through this, I call it innovation hype,
uh,
right? There's a innovation hype cycle because analysts publish these papers and everybody does. And there's a certain hype is built, right? Machine learning has autonomous vehicles is a good example.
mm,
This has been there. I own a Tesla, but I saw it's no way autonomous vehicle, right? It has
mm,
some features. Right? We are far away from that, but it has been sold so much. So people, once you have the innovation hype, then you start focusing on that aspect rather
mm,
than focusing on what's the real problem you're going to solve. Like you said, machine learning can be a misnomer. A
mm,
lot of the things you can do by using simple regression analysis that all of
mm,
us learn in engineering or
mm,
statistics techniques. You can
mm.
call it machine learning, artificial intelligence, but that's so you should focus on what problem you're trying to solve and what's the right tool rather than saying that, oh, this is the latest hype,
Yes.
IoT, where people just throw out lots of terms. And the question is, what problem are you trying to solve? What's the right tool for it? Right?
Yeah. Great. I think so. Let's get into the innovation part of this thing, right? So, are there any interesting or different ways to look at this, as opposed to organizations have been putting together some innovation models, especially isolating some teams so that they don't get influenced or get pulled into the larger organizational complexity or politics, if you will, right? So a lot of organizations keep small teams, silo teams. You call the skunk works idea, right? And of course, many companies try their best to define an innovation mechanism, either organically or top down. Are there any? How would you suggest people think about innovating for this particular experience?
So there are two, three ways. The first one I do believe that we have done. I've done it in Juniper now. Juniper has a center of excellence, central one for user experience. That means you bring in the best user experience researchers,
Mhm.
give them a separate organization, center of excellence,
Mm,
and increase their visibility by having the report to one of the executives like me or C
mm,
staff member. Advantage of that is that now they have a mission to
mm,
look across the product and start educating people, start asking questions, giving input. That's number one.
mm,
Number two, I have found a very good way to create innovation ideas is that a lot of the companies do hackathon.
mm,
Hackathons are very popular, especially with younger engineers and all. But
mm,
they get focused on coolest engineering innovation you want to do.
mm,
But I have now been asking my UX researchers to throw out in hackathon challenges.
mm, mm,
So they become part of the hackathon teams as they become for, and they say, as part of the any hackathon idea, let's focus on experience first.
mm.
And UX researcher is not really an engineer in that sense. He's
Yeah.
not going to focus on all the engineering features. And creating such a culture where you bring in people and throughout challenges, that starts creating a better understanding of innovation, focused on experience. So
Mm.
those are the two things I found very useful, and we are putting them in practice in our own company.
Great. No, I think the designers in the audience would love what you're saying. Essentially, you're saying get them a seat on the table and involve at every
And
levels, right? And
protect them by having a centralized resource, so it's not
right.
subject to all the budget
Shared
constraints.
resources thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, what happens is when push comes to shove and you have to cut some budget or do some compromise, people might compromise, right?
Right. And more importantly, traditionally, companies have encouraged ideas and innovations more so for engineering teams to come up with these cool ideas, like hackathons, as you call. But either you do a similar type of hackathons for the user experience teams, or even is it even more?
You say researchers in every hackathon team.
That's
So
exactly what I was
when the
going to say.
hackathon team comes together, submit a proposal, you're
Yeah.
going to say, you say, add a UX researcher to that.
Right. So bring in a user
That also,
researcher.
sorry, I just want to, that also changes the cultural bias because now the person UX research is part of the team. He's
Yeah.
trying to get them win, right?
Yeah.
And the judges are going to look at the user experience as an important part of the hackathon result. So I think it changes the cultural bias and suddenly UX becomes part of the team.
Yeah. I think you probably with that answered one of the audience question. Vatsalya has asked, you know, what combining user experience, product, and engineering is a kind of a complex model, and a lot of friction. Sometimes the differences bubble up to escalations unnecessarily, and hence you are saying that they don't treat them as different teams, although organizationally they may be different. Embed these teams into a, which is what, by the way, the modern agile methodologies you're supposed to be doing, right? The self-organizing team of a Scrum is part
Right.
of that part of it, right? Is there anything
Now
else that?
the advantage of this is the product manager writing the user story,
Ah,
writes the UX story as part of the Scrum exercise.
okay, okay.
So that's a very different thing. So PLM has to now also learn
Hmm.
that it's not user story about a feature, it's a
Hmm.
UX story, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So when you go into the sprint, you have multiple of those. Yeah.
Super. So Ashish is asking, how do we design an organization structure for this? Is there a way to think about org design, team design slightly differently? One you've already highlighted. Get the design leadership at the seat at the table and create a full org which is not a shared org resources or anything. But other than that, is there any other ways that you suggest the audience here to restructure or look at the hierarchy? Or
So I
the
think it's still work in progress, in my opinion, because people are learning. But one of the things I have suggested, and I'm not going to claim that I'm successful, that the product managers, when the product management team, the product
Mm,
leadership
mm,
needs to have people with UX background.
mm.
So when they go talk to customers, they're asking different sets of questions. That's something that organizations resist typically because PLMs really are a special breed. They come from engineering background, they come from marketing background, and their biggest strength is they understand customer need. And they can project what is needed, what will be successful. So they can feel this is a distraction to some extent. But I think Institute of Product Leadership like US, which is unique institute by the way. I've been visited you guys in Bangalore before. You could start having as part of the product leadership courses and all UX as a part of the training. So the product manager, product leader, is already has that one of the skills. They just don't come from engineering background or marketing background or some sales background, but they also have the UX background.
Great. I think, Raj, I don't know when you visited, whenever you visited it, somebody has taken your advice very seriously. And every program, product management program that is offered by IPL has user experience as a core skill for the product managers, right? So I think there is no denying that products are being differentiated based on user experience, and which is what we're talking about. And that should not be an afterthought, right? It is more of needs to be baked in. And the person who is orchestrating the product process, right, which is typically the product managers, need to have that user experience and design, thinking, design skills to facilitate that product, right? So is that how? Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
MBA programs in multiple schools should start doing that, right?
Yeah.
Because they could really try to have that as a track in the MBA programs.
Right.
Because you teach them everything, accounting, finance, everything. Why not also have one thing called user experience?
Yes, absolutely. Right. Now, how does unquestionably technology and data are going to play a very crucial role in these experience-driven products, right? So there are various, simple example, as you said, from a customer service point of view, what you are using, the company that you acquired, which uses data as well as predictive ways of fixing that problem before it surfaces, right? What are the other areas that you see, and what kind of technologies would you see? Because collecting data, using data today has become a very I would say delicate situation, right? And people need to buy into the aspect that my data is being collected and as long as the assurance is that it is for improving your experience, people may not be that averse to giving that data. I mean,
Especially large enterprises, financial institutions who are subject to regulation and compliance, they
right.
resist. They don't. So every product, in my opinion, should have a phone home capability built. But when you phone home, you have to get customers buying because the data running from the production environments, you want to send it to the cloud. So you have to have a way to anonymize it. And it has to be certifiable anonymization that you can convince the customers. I'm going to send the logs, right? Consumer probably do that, right? We get on a Chrome browser or somewhere, they ask you, is it okay to send you my Microsoft Office asks you that, MacBook asks you that, can I send data to, and we typically say yes, some people say no. But if you have a enterprise customers who are subject to a compliance regulation, health care industry, manufacturing, they're all, we need to provide that anonymization of the phone home data so you can stream the data. Okay. The second part of this is that once you get data from multiple customers, you have to still have to isolate it because people are worried that you will share data which could give competitive edge away. But you should be able to correlate it across. So you need technology that allows correlating these isolated data from multiple customers so that you can draw insights, right? That's very important. The third one is, I think, data lake, right? Many companies think amount of data they're going to consume is so much. They say, I'll manage it myself. I'll use S3 buckets in AWS. That does not work very well because data governance is also an important part. How do you keep, when you delete it? You have to promise people that you're going to delete it in 2 months or 3 months and actually do it.
Yeah.
Get audited, right? So those kind of things are important part of the technology that people have to do. Second one is natural language processing.
Okay.
User experience nowadays can also be driven by virtual assistants.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And that requires NLP. And NLP, natural language processing, has evolved amazing. Right now, it's so accurate. So I think that's another investment you have to do from technology.
Okay. I think many companies are putting that effort, especially because it seems to be the easiest and most effective way of bringing that experience, because that's a direct touch point to the user of the product. Do you have any view on what type of data should companies focus on? And when I say what type of data, I'm talking about operations data versus experience data, right? So experience data, operations data always tells us what happened, right?
Yeah.
But experience data should look at and say why it happened and how it happened,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, any
I
thought?
think the normal we collects is logs or some logs, which show the operational data, like you said, which is really after the fact. But
Yeah.
another thing that which is not available today, it's very hard to do, is
Hmm.
that actually tracking the user actions
Hmm.
through API sequence. What
Hmm.
API calls were made in what sequence that
Hmm.
led to this particular state.
Hmm.
The second one is if they're using user interface, what clicks, which screens they went to.
Hmm.
Because nowadays, because of the React framework, kind of a framework used in user experience, you have different components, different widgets. And depending on what you're doing, the widgets show up.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
if you could know the sequence at which those widgets were activated and what was used, that data is very useful because that's directly correlatable to user experience.
Hmm.
What they went through and how did they themselves launch a particular feature, use the particular feature, what problems they ran into. That data is not collected today. It's
Hmm.
not available.
Hmm.
Products are not designed to collect the data. We collect data logs about the standard syslog because I'm an engineer. I know how to do syslogs, and my product is built in to provide all kinds of operational data. That's called telemetry. But now the telemetry has to go beyond that, I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. I think, that's all I'm afraid we have time for. So we started with, the first principles, understanding what experience means, how to define that, what to look for. Some examples that you gave about both from the business world and the consumer world, how to identify the areas or mechanisms to see what works well, what type of products are more amenable towards experience, and how do you start thinking, applying, bringing in user experience and design more central, making it more central to the product development and thinking about these products, also helping people understand how to structure that within the organization, right? And great examples, especially from the networking and technology world. Raj, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate you. I hope the audience, I see about more than 40 plus people on LinkedIn as well, still hanging to every word that you're saying, and appreciate you taking this time. So just, over to you, Shama, but if you can just hang on for 2 minutes, Raj, we'll let you go in 2 minutes. Yeah. So
Thank you. And
thank
thank
you.
you, and best wishes to everyone. Stay safe. Yeah.
Thank you, Raj. So quickly, folks, for those of you who are joining, today, the best question that we asked, and really good one, is from Rohit. Congratulations, Rohit. Please reach out to the team. They'll get you a digital learning course of your choice from IPL. And the leaderboard is a very interesting way for people, for you all, to let others know to join these sessions. It's like a game. The people that you invite, your friends and colleagues, you get on top of the leaderboard, and there are some very interesting giveaways, including signed copies of books from IPL faculty, who are all practitioners, and especially in the area of design thinking, user experience, and those areas. Also, some credits on the digital courses. The other two important, quick announcements that I wanted to make is one, one of the main purpose of doing this festival is to build and nurture a product community in this country. So to that effect, there are already 1,600 plus product professionals who joined community.productleadersforum.org, or you can scan the QR code, go to the mobile app and join. There's a lot of very interesting discussions, content being shared, and a lot of CXOs there giving their insights or learnings. The other one, which personally is my favorite, is started by the alumni of the Institute of Product Leadership. Wanted to study the landscape of product management today in India, right? So where does it stand as a discipline, as a profession, Still, it's relatively nascent in this country, but every year we try to understand how it is changing. So please take the survey interesting.today/benchmark studies, the URL, or scan that code. It takes about 10 minutes for you to do that. But whoever takes it will get a nice report giving some very useful and interesting information related to the salary levels of product managers in this country, the day-to-day activities that they participate in, whom do they report to, and what hiring managers are looking for to get into the product roles, right? So with that, Dr. Raj, please accept a small token of appreciation from us. Thank you so much for joining and sharing your insights. Totally appreciate it.
Thank you, and please say hello to Pinkesh. I haven't seen him since the last time came
He
here.
is in the US. I'm sure. He was telling me that he will reach out to you. I'll ask him to get in touch with you as well. Right?
No, thank you, and thank you all. It was a pleasure.
And audience, don't forget to join for tomorrow's session. Again, from the product-led organizations, we have an incredible speaker who is also a chief product officer at Viacom, Shampa Banerjee. So until then, good night and thank you so much.
Thank you, Raj and Sai Satish, for that insightful fireside chat. It was amazing. And audience, thank you for joining in. Although I request you all to take a few seconds to share your feedback on the session via the poll on your screen. Please take this poll on the screen and share your feedback. So it is critical for us to make improvements for the next round of the festival. So let us know your thoughts. Before we conclude, do not forget to join us tomorrow for a session by Shampa Banerjee at 8 p.m. And thank you for your participation, audience, today. With that note, I end tonight's session. Happy learning and stay skilled. Have a great night.